I got the call and I heard the mid-cabin door blew out, which was really weird for me because I knew the door and I'm like, well, that door just doesn't blow out, it's bolted on. So it was two quick questions I asked. I said, hey, what kind of airplane is it? Max? It's a Max? And I said, how old is it? 10 weeks. So my maintenance and engineer mind went in. I said, well, that door doesn't get checked for 2 years. I have to be sure. I got to check 65 airplanes. We grounded the fleet before the FAA grounded the worldwide fleet before everyone else. It was like, no, put safety first.
What does it take to be a great leader in moments of calm and in crisis? How do you maintain strength in a heartfelt way? Welcome back, or welcome to the Finding Mastery podcast. I am your host, Dr. Michael Gervais, by trade and training a high-performance psychologist. And this week's guest is Ben Minicucci, the CEO of Alaska Airlines. Ben is one of the most respected leaders in modern aviation. He's guiding Alaska through bold transformation, including their recent acquisition of Hawaiian Airlines. Born to Italian immigrants and raised in Montreal, Ben's leadership roots were planted early.
My father was illiterate, never went to school, couldn't read or write, gets on a boat, goes across the entire Atlantic Ocean to Montreal where they raise a family. But the one thing they always said is, we work hard, do what's right, and be honest, and we want you to go to school because we didn't go to school. When you have an education, good things come.
He brings that same spirit into the boardroom, leading with unwavering values, deep relational intelligence, and a sharp sensitivity to culture.
When people come into a room, one of the things they want to hear the leader, hey, what do you think? And I never say what I think at the beginning. I've learned that because once I say what I think, everyone thinks it's the best idea in the world. Instead, I say, no, I want to listen from you. Tell me what you guys think. There's something about the wisdom of the group. And so for me, it's about talking less and listening more.
So with that, let's jump right into this conversation with Ben Minicucci. Okay, Ben, this has been a long time coming. I just want to start with a note that I have a real appreciation for you as a man, as a human, and as a leader. And so as I've gotten to know you, the way that you work is special. And I hope that I can do it your genius service in this conversation. And I just want to start by better understanding, where you come from. And I think that has shaped so much of who you are as an extraordinary human and leader. So maybe we can just start at the top. What was the breakfast table like? What was the dinner table like when you were growing up?
Oh, Mike, thank you. Thank you for doing this, and you're very kind. I'm flattered, honestly.
Cool.
My upbringing was great for me. I mean, and just to give a context, my parents immigrated from Italy in the 50s. It was after the World War II. Italy was very poor, and there was no work. And my father had an uncle who was, they call it America. They say, hey, come here, there's work. And next thing you know, my father gets on a boat. My father was illiterate, never went to school, couldn't read or write. Gets on a boat, goes across the entire, Atlantic Ocean. Ends up at a port of Halifax, takes a train all the way back to Montreal where he meets his uncle, my great uncle. And he's got work for him and he works. And then 6 years later goes back, sees my grandfather and says, I'd like to marry your daughter. They knew the family, where you come from a good family. I respect, yes, you can marry my daughter. And takes my mom back to Montreal where they raise a family. And me and I have two brothers and a sister. I'm the youngest, and we got raised in Montreal. And my mother had fifth grade. My father never went to school, and the amount of respect I have, because as you get older, you understand how two people navigate a culture. This is a French culture. They come in because it was Montreal. Very little English. It's all French, and all they do is speak Italian. They can barely read or write, and they create a life for themselves, and they work hard and all they said is, it's hard work, and nobody's going to give you anything for free. You work hard, do what's right, and be honest and work hard, and good things will come. But the one thing they always said is, we want you to go to school because we didn't go to school. And when you have an education, good things come. So that was like the dinner table. We'd always wait for my father to come back home from work. Nobody ate before he came back from work. We'd eat and have dinner. It was great. But I never knew what I didn't have. We didn't have a lot, obviously, and we'd eat from, the backyard, the tomatoes, the peppers, everything was grown. We'd cure our own meats, make our own sausage, prosciutto, salamis, so that's all I knew. I knew that we made everything. Wine, we make our own wine. My father would get wine, we make so everything we did on our own. They rarely bought packaged goods. Everything was made at home. And so that's how I grew up. I grew up with that mentality, pasta, everything, the only thing, every once in a while, you'd see a goat come in, chickens and live. And that was my upbringing. They were very frugal, every dollar counted. There's nothing more important than family and taking care of each other and your family. And so those values get ingrained in you.
How did they teach family matters?
It was always about taking care of each other.
Yeah.
And it was always about, everything you did was to make sure that, you were safe, that there was food on the table. It was like the essentials, like y'all worked to make sure there's food on the table, roof on your head. I mean, that's how I grew up. It was the basics. It wasn't, lots of toys and lots of stuff. It was like this, everything is about hard work. And I remember my dad saying his aspiration, you got to remember, and we all did, my brothers and sisters, but I used to do his pay slips. At the end, he used to tell me, okay, Monday I worked 12 hours, and I'd have to write it on. Tuesday I worked 11.
And how old are you?
I was 8, 9 years old, and I would do this for him. And then the only thing he could do is sign his name, right? So after I did this, he would sign his name, and then he would hand that in, right? So I would see all those hours. He'd work, 6 days a week, and then, on Sunday he'd work around the house. But that was his life. It was work hard, make sure I can provide for my family. That is what the leader of the house does, right? It provides for the family.
What emotion are you feeling right now?
Just an immense amount of pride for what my father did. Again,
where do you feel it?
I just feel it all over. Just the amount of. It's like I think about him driving the car, him not. He wouldn't drive by reading signs. He'd drive by landmarks. So he'd be driving and saying, I got to turn here. And as a kid, you don't realize it, right? You're a little kid and say your dad gets you from point A to point B. And only later I realized, no, he can't read that. He's driving because he knows he turns right at the white building. And then he drives down until he sees, that orange brick house. And then he turns left there. And that's how he navigated. But he knew every part of the city. Because he lived there. He learned how to drive, and especially now when you think of, I think of all the challenges and stress you could feel going through this stuff. I think about him and saying, wow, here's someone who raised 4 kids, bought a house, put food on the table, and he was just driven to succeed for providing for his family. And I think of how he started and the opportunities he gave us. It was just incredible.
Yeah, when your body changed and you felt all of the emotions, thinking, reminiscing about the care that your dad had for you. It's not lost on me that is one of the main drivers for the culture that you're wanting to build. We'll get to that, which is about care and kindness and taking care of each other. So we'll get to that, but you're starting to kind of fertilize some seeds here. When you were feeling that emotion, now I want to go back into this conversation. When you're feeling all of that emotion, there's this taboo thing that men are not supposed to do emotions, and in the workforce, maybe women aren't supposed to do emotions for different reasons. We've both got both genders have this message that emotions are not okay in the workforce, which to me is an insanity. Emotions drive the whole thing. Relationships are at the center of whatever we're trying to do. So what did you just do when you felt all of those emotions? Because they were there, but you managed it. You worked with it. Were you trying to push them down? Or were you like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, Mike, I'm glad you saw that. Or was it like, oh shit, it's going to...
No, I'm glad you saw that. I think today, I'm much more comfortable expressing my feelings more than I did 20, 30 years ago.
Why is that?
I think because it's one of the things I want to promote in our organization, and even with our board. I had this great discussion with a group of board directors from across the country. I said, one of the things that I want to do with my board that I appreciate is the transparency and vulnerability when you don't have the answer. And not having to feel like you're showing up and saying, well, I gotta have all the answers, and I gotta be, this confident and never show any sign of weakness. And I think that's the worst thing for a leader, because I think that you'll never get to the right place. You never get to the right solution when you say, look, these are the things that are going well. Here are things that are not going so well. And me and my team are struggling through a couple of things. And we don't have the right answer yet, but you show this transparency, honesty, vulnerability, that you see the problem, you see it, you acknowledge it, and now you have to own it. And once you own it, you can go change it. And this is one of the things I'm trying to promote in your organization. See it, own it, and change it. Because if you see it, that is, a lot of people just don't want to see it. They don't want to see where they're not hitting expectations, or they're not being the best that they can be. And if they can't see it themselves, hopefully they have someone close that says, hey, you're not hitting the mark. And then when they do see it, can you actually say, okay, you know what? It's mine now to own. And I'd be interested in what you think, because athletes are the same way, right? If you're not performing as an athlete, they usually know, because it's pretty brutal. That environment, that industry is pretty brutal. But how do they own it? I think that's where I see the difference between great athletes and athletes who maybe don't live up to their potential or refuse to admit that maybe they've got work to do, but the ones that own it are the ones that end up changing outcomes and having fantastic seasons and excel to be, one of the best, in their trade. And so the see it, own it, change it for me has been a big revelation, because seeing it as being vulnerable and saying, all right, I'm not hitting the mark in this area, and I got to own it to go change it.
Finding Mastery is brought to you by Felix Gray. And one of the biggest challenges we face today is our sheer amount of screen time. It messes with our sleep, our clarity, even our mood. And that's why I've been using Felix Gray glasses. What I appreciate most about Felix Gray is that they're not just another wellness product. They're rooted in real science. Developed alongside leading researchers and ophthalmologists, they've demonstrated that these types of glasses, they boost melatonin. They help you fall asleep faster and hit just a little bit deeper in the stages of rest. And when I'm on the road, bouncing between time zones, slipping on my Felix Grays in the evening, it's the simple way to cue my body to wind down. And when I'm locked into deep work, they help me stay focused for longer without this digital fatigue that starts to creep in. Plus, I think they look great. If you're ready to feel the difference for yourself, Felix Gray is offering all Finding Mastery listeners 20% off. So just head to felixgray.com and use the code FindingMastery20 at checkout. Again, that's spelled Felix, FelixGray.com, and use the code FindingMastery20 at felixgray.com for 20% off. I love what you're saying, and I have lots to say about the athlete bit here, and I will, but I want to first go to. There's two things I want to say, so I want to say them out loud to you now about. The owning it bit is actually, I think, driven by something else than owning, and I want to come back to that. But owning is the thing that we need to do. So I'm just saying it out loud to come back to it. I want to talk about the vulnerability piece, because there's a strength in, hey, here's how it is. Here's what I see. Things that are going well and things that are not going well, and this is where we're struggling. This is where things are going really well. There's a power in that, and there's a risk in being vulnerable. Right? In a traditional leadership model. You're changing it. This is why I wanted to have this conversation with you. How do you manage when you say to somebody who can decide if you're going to have a seat, if your contract's going to get renewed, if whatever, and you're saying in an honest way, here's the things that are not going properly. And they might have a bad day, or they might be vindictive, or they might not be trustworthy, or they might want their cousin in your role. How do you manage that when it starts to get twisted in the wind, when you're doing the quote unquote right thing for change?
What I tell people a lot, because it is one of the hardest things to do, because, in my organization, when people, especially when they hit the higher levels of the organization and they show what they believe is weakness or some inability to do a role or a job, they might think, hey, I'm going to lose this job that pays me well, has good benefits, and this fantastic thing they have can disappear. And I say, over time, if you try and hide it, the mask is going to get lifted, and we will see the true self that's there, and you'll lose it anyway. So what I want to see from people is not how you're trying to hide it, because I will see through that over time. You might come in and fool me once, and I might say, okay, well, they put on a good show. The second, third, and fourth time, outcomes never lie. Outcomes never lie is what I tell people. And your job at the end of the day is to produce outcomes. And so if over time your track record in producing outcomes is strong, that's when you have the ability to even be vulnerable and transparent and feel safe and not feel like, well, I'm at risk. And I think that's what I tell people. I said, the more you do it, the more you'll have a track record of outcomes, and you'll have more confidence in people to say, look, this is the type of person when they say, look, things aren't going well, but I see it and I own it, and I will come back with a plan that's going to change that outcome, for the good, whether it's for employees, whether it's for guests, whether it's for safety or operations, or for whatever the area. To me, that's what I see. But when I see someone trying to hide the true nature of an outcome, then I know the red flags go up.
So it's a book I'll just reference right now. It's called The Knight in Rusty Armor. And you reference the mask like a Carl Jung, the psychologist, the analyst where I go to, which is like, we're all wearing these masks for approval. And over time, those masks get exposed because nobody can keep it up long enough.
Can't.
And you're referencing to outcomes and the mask. And in sport, we say, what did you say? Outcomes, you can't hide outcomes?
Yeah, outcomes don't lie.
Outcomes don't lie. In sport, like in this, tape doesn't lie.
Yeah.
So you see effort.
Yeah.
You see enthusiasm. You see like disciplined technique. You see it on film. You can't quite catch it live, sometimes maybe, but like, so the tape doesn't lie. Okay. Or tape tells the truth. So the knight in rusty armor is this idea that most of us are walking around with this big armor, and we got to shine it up. And, we want it to look really good. And if you don't shine it, which takes a long time to do, it starts to rust. And then, if you're not polishing it and shining it and it's rusting, you got to oil it now too. And it's heavy, by the way. And the whole narrative of this, it's like a 50-page book, is why not go to like moccasins? Okay, so from the knight in rusty armor to something that is stripped down. And that's what you're calling for. And I wonder how much of that is your appreciation for what we would say is the best. Now I'm going to go back to your earlier point. The best of the best of the best, the half percenters, they demand the truth.
Yeah.
They might live in a warped reality about what they're capable of and what they think they can do, but they know that the truth is what is going to allow them to make the right investments to get better. And they hold other people to that crazy standard, usually to themselves as well.
Well, and I think you see that in sports. You see some of those type of individuals that delineate themselves from everyone else, right?
That's right.
You can see, I don't know, like what Tom Brady did, right? Mm-hmm. Like where, the investment he put in time to perform at a level so late in his career, like I've never seen an athlete do, getting into his 40s and still perform at that level. When I see that is a dedication and discipline to his sport and his trade that, like, I take to myself and say, look, that as an executive leader, as a CEO, like you train and you work at your you try and master your trade to the best of your ability every time. You should be learning. You should be getting better. If don't let anything slip away. And if there's an area that you need to go work on, throwing a ball on the run, going the other way, that's what you should do. Go train that. And there's an equivalent in the business world, right? Hey, I'm not comfortable doing that. That's outside my level of comfort. You got to go train it, no matter where you are in your career. So that I see that's where I see, and that's where I like to push my executives, is to say, like, come in and be vulnerable. Tell me where this area that you need to work on. You don't have to hide it from me. Once I hear it from you, it's great. Tell me that, because now I know you can go work on it, and I'm going to help you be successful.
Well, they have to trust you.
Yeah.
To do that, they have to trust themselves. One, to bring the truth forward. Because as soon as you bring truth forward that is unremarkable,
Yeah.
right, that is unflattering, is that now there's that vulnerability piece. And what you're saying very clearly is it's in that space between bringing it forward and your ability to respond to it, which includes the executive leader, the CEO's ability to create some air cover,
Yeah.
to work with you. So how do you help your people trust you? And then, because ultimately you are responsible for saying, hey, I'm sorry, but we need to move on. So
One of the things I've learned as I've, and I'm not the leader today that I was 20 years ago. Yeah, the core is there, but you say, like, I have to get better. I got to do these things better. One of the things that I knew I had to get better was listening and asking questions. And so when people come into a room, one of the things they want to hear the leader, hey, what do you think? And I never say what I think at the beginning. I've learned that. I never, because once I say what I think, everyone thinks it's the best idea in the world, right? Instead, I said, no, I want to listen from you. Tell me what you guys think. Tell me what,
and it's organic. It's not like you're going to twist it.
No, it's organic. And if Mike is not speaking up and Mike's in the room and I know things are spinning in his head, hey, see, Mike, what do you think? What do you think? And I try and draw out as many thoughts and the diversity of thought and opinions, especially if it's a tricky topic that I may have a view on, but I'm not really sure. Like I'm 100% sure. And I think for a leader always to say, like, I got a thought on it, but there's something about the wisdom of the group when all these ideas come that you can build on an even better solution to, the problem that you're facing. And so for me, it's about listening, talking less and listening more, listening hard. And the one thing, especially in today's society with all the electronic equipment, this tendency to touch and not focus, listen hard to when people are talking. Listen to what Mike is saying, listen to what Andy is saying, and Shane and Kyle. And listen hard, because if you listen hard, there's a lot that they're saying that's important. And then ask questions.
What are you listening for?
I'm listening for something, because everyone at the core has something that they feel that could be, and if it's a delicate topic, something that could hurt the organization, damage trust in the organization, not be good for customers, be costly for the business. And so what I look for, especially when there's, you have strong characters in a room, is to make sure, those strong characters have their point of view, but the ones that don't may have some insight that can lead you to a better solution. And so that's what I've learned over time, is to go draw out a lot of these things, especially when I'm making big decisions about stuff like acquiring Hawaiian Airlines or making big decisions with employees or guests, like changing loyalty programs with guests and all those type of things, which could be easy to do on the surface. But when you peel back the layers of the onion, you got to make sure that, hey, this has a lot of dominoes that can impact. And I may not see all those dominoes from where I sit, but other people do.
So you are relational as a leader,
Yeah.
right? And you're trying to pull all of the information, the wisdom, you're harvesting wisdom from the collective, and then you're wanting to hear it all to fine tune your point or to create a net new position.
I will change my opinion. If I hear a compelling argument on, hey, I think we're going down the wrong path. And that's what I want my people to. I always say, look, if you think we're going to, I want you to throw that red flag.
So is your approach risk management? Like, I want to hear the dangers, the red zones. I want to hear all of that. Or is it, I want to hear the upsides, the above the line, below the line thinking is a way to think about it.
Yeah.
How are you approaching those conversations?
Like, I want to hear both. Like, I want to hear if, like, for example, if someone has a strong view on where to go, I want to hear the counter. And I want to hear, hey, Mike, no, here's why I disagree with that approach. I want to hear someone across the table saying something, and then I want to hear another. And what I'm trying to do is promote this conversation and dialogue and challenge.
Yeah, because you're diluting groupthink is what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then do you come? Okay, so when we do work with athletes and executives, one of, I think, the great gifts that I and other folks that do this work, like you might do this work with people, is when I'm working with somebody, I close my eyes and I need time under tension to understand them. I need to know some stuff about them. And then I close my eyes and I think deeply, not listen to, but I think deeply about what I think is possible for them. And then I want to calibrate that with them. And there's two ways to do that. And so this is like casting a vision, creating a vision of what could be. It's exciting, it's wonderful. And there's two ways to do that. Either I come to and I say, all right, Ben, next week, let's talk about what we think is possible. And I come to it and I say, all right, Ben, here we are. You know what I think is possible? And I say this grand thing. Or I come into that meeting and I say, Ben, what do you think is possible? I've got my idea, but I want to hear what you, is that more the second part more your style?
Yeah, it is a little bit, because I've seen too often with people as I've grown in my career is the leader. Now you're exceptional because you think on a grander scale, but some leaders, their thinking isn't as broad. So if they come in and say, "Hey, I thought about it. Here's what I'm thinking for you," right? And it could be way smaller than what you're
That's exactly right. So, okay, so now you're on to the second bit, which is the calibration.
Yeah.
So either way I think can work.
Yeah.
But the art of this extraordinary process of listening deeply or thinking about a vision together is the calibration.
Yeah.
Is that you'll see their, if you're really good, you'll see the pupils constrict or dilate. You'll see the smile, micro expressions. You'll see, and sometimes you'll see overwhelming, like, "Oh, that's bigger than anyone's ever said." Or you'll hear that, "What? Come on, man, really? That's it?" So you got to calibrate with them. So we're a little adjacent to your wisdom harvesting that you're doing.
But in your role, like you come in as an equal. And what I worry about in something is, like, I just worry about was my voice with someone to say,
drowning it out.
Yeah, okay. Because I've seen in the leader of the room say, "Hey, I've got a great idea about how to do this," and then everyone says, "You know what? If you haven't created the environment where someone says, Ben, that doesn't sound like such a great idea," a lot of people, if you haven't fostered that environment, will just fall in line. That's a great idea, and that's a great idea. And what I'm looking for is, one, making sure people are coming up with the ideas, and then putting some gasoline and lighting it on fire. Okay, I need, give us more. Give us the best that this thing can give us.
Oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
Give us the best. So I'm thinking about like a new CEO or a new executive leader or a new leader anywhere that's building a team. First 90 days type of thought is that you would walk into a room and you'd say, here's an idea. Let's give the best to this. Is that how you're framing it?
It's give us the best on this. Yeah. And what I'm trying to get out of people is, and it's funny, as you're talking, I think about some of the folks that I really have to get it drawn out and to really make them feel comfortable. They're probably my smartest leaders, the smartest people. That they're actually brilliant, right? Academics, in the school, like, just top of their class, but they're afraid to be wrong. They're afraid not to have the exact right answer.
That's right. FOPO. How about it?
FOPO, right?
Yeah,
and
right,
say,
yeah.
well, no, I've always been the smartest in the class. I got to have the right answer for the boss.
Yeah, my identity, what they're thinking.
For me, when I see that, I'm like, okay, I got to get that away from you. I got to make you feel comfortable not being the smartest person in the room. I got to make you feel comfortable that maybe you're not right all the time, and that maybe the idea that you had can be built upon to be even bigger than what you thought and better than what you thought. And I think that's the thing for me when I see in a room. Like I kind of look at the person and say, I need to draw more out of you, and then I need to build on it, because I can see that maybe you're a little bit, like you said, you see the body language, you're a little tense, and oh my God, does Ben think I'm wrong? Does Ben think, I don't have the best solution to this thing?
Okay, so you don't diminish your shine so that other people can. You are pulling the best of people forward, and then you're looking at each individual to create a micro relationship to help them kind of open the aperture to bring it forward.
Yeah.
And some people so there is this lens of, let's call it FOPO, fear of people's opinions, where it's like, I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to look a certain way. I don't want to be rejected, And there's also people are introverted thinkers. And introverted thinkers in a kind of a room of 12 other smart people, they're processing the whole time. They're and then they need to go away and come back.
Yeah.
But sometimes we don't have that time.
Yeah.
So if you could speak to a leader right now that's trying to establish this harvesting wisdom, collective insight to bring the best forward for the thing we're trying to solve, what would you suggest to them as a best practice? Like super concrete.
Don't overthink what you're going to say, and you have an instinctual reaction to a statement or something. Just say it. Have the confidence to say it, and why you think there could be issues with it. And I think that's what I'm looking for. Is I'm looking for that dialogue, that constructive challenge with people that brings the best. And I think when you have that, like when I'm in a room and I don't hear anybody talk and it's quiet, I think that's where I worry. I worry that, okay, this group is not comfortable saying what they have to say from they're thinking about it so often. I got to be careful what I say, how I say it, who I say it to. And I think when I look at my organization, that is a cancer for me.
Finding Mastery is brought to you by OneSkin. We talk a lot at Finding Mastery about foundational elements of health, sleep and mindset, movement, yet skin health rarely gets the attention it deserves. And it's something I'm really serious about. This is not just about appearance. Skin is our largest organ, flat out. It's a living, breathing barrier that plays a huge role in how we age, how we feel, and also how we perform. That's why I was originally intrigued by OneSkin and why they've become a staple in my daily routine. They're not your typical skincare brand. Founded by a team of scientists who tested over 900 peptides, they discovered and developed OS1, the first peptide scientifically proven to reduce senescent skin cells, which are a primary driver of aging and inflammation. We recently had Dr. Carolina Reese Oliveira, OneSkin's co-founder, on the podcast, and her perspective on skin health as a lever for full body longevity was eye-opening. She broke down how skin aging isn't just cosmetic, it's a signal of deeper biological aging. If you haven't listened yet, I'd highly recommend you do so. I walked away with a great reframe on how skincare is a meaningful part of the longevity equation. So if you want to try OneSkin for yourself, head to oneskin.co/findingmastery and use the code findingmastery for 15% off your first order. Again, that's oneskin.co/findingmastery with the code findingmastery.
And
How did mom and dad, let's go back to breakfast table, dinner table. How were those conversations? Are you responding to what you didn't have, or are you reenacting what you did have?
You're making me think back and dinner conversation stuff. And maybe it's how Italians are and stuff, but Italians are very like, I'm going to say what I think, and I'm going to tell you. And sometimes, the truth hurts, but it was very honest. It was very visceral, I think you're absolutely wrong and out to lunch, and so those conversations, I was used to really hearing honest, visceral discussions about a topic and very back and forth and no holds barred, right? And so I was very used to it. And so I'm very comfortable. I grew up being very comfortable in people going back and forth and challenging each other and it getting pretty heated, because Italians get heated when they talk, at least my family did. And so I'm used to heated I'm very comfortable. I'm very comfortable with that. So, and it's funny, when I came to Pacific Northwest is more, control, contain, emotions. And so I like bringing more of that out to say like, hey, I want some of that debate. I want some of that challenge, and tell us what you think, and don't be all in your head, So I grew up with that, feeling very comfortable. And in a meeting, when things get heated, things do get heated, I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? It doesn't faze me at all. I'm like, yeah. I feel like, great, now we're talking. Good. Let's talk. Let's talk. Even if, I feel good when that happens.
Because you had time under tension with an animated, spirited conversation, people saying whatever, and you don't get kicked out of the family for that.
No,
just like that's not why you get kicked out of maybe a team discussion of bringing it forward. Results are a different thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And what I try and do when I see someone bring a very controversial subject up and they are in a big group going against the grain. And even for me, it's like, whoa, okay, that was really good. And then I actually congratulate a person. Hey, that took a lot of courage
Publicly.
publicly. I said, that took a lot of courage. That's what I'm looking for. That's leadership.
Yeah.
You know, because I said, look, it's challenging the status quo. And there was one, I'm remembering an incident one of my leaders did that upset a bunch of people. But at the core, he was right. At the core, he was right. And that's what I said. At the core, he's right, because when we're having this other discussion, there was like a little feeling. I said, oh, is this the right thing? And everyone was like, everyone else, I was pulling a pin. No, it's right. Or, and one guy said, that feels like this. And I'm like, and then there was silence along the room. I'm like, excellent. I said, because I think there could be something there. And I congratulated him because it took courage for him to say that, because it would impact everybody in that room. Like he was saying, impacts everyone, their benefits and stuff. And I thought it was great. We need more of that. And for me to give cover to that is very important.
And to spot it and call it publicly.
And call it public.
See it, own it, right?
Yeah.
Change it. I learned this from one of the U.S. Olympic sports psychologists, a good friend of mine, and he's got 3 words that he says capture the best coaching. Now, it's not ever going to be this simple, but when an athlete does something that you're watching and observing, it's that, and then the athlete says this, and you say yes, that. So that, yes, that. So you catch it, that right there, that, and then they like this. So that, yes, that, which is exactly what you're referencing as well. Like, nice job. I see that. I feel that. Thank you for having the courage to bring that forward. You're rewarding it right on the spot, it's such an agitating experience when the room is like, I don't know, 2/3 the way to closure on an idea, right? Or we're just kind of leaving the conversation to the next agenda item and everyone's feeling okay about it. And then somebody says, wait, hold on. I haven't brought this forward yet.
That's exactly it. And you're right. And a little bit, it's funny because I think when I see discussions not going exactly like, look, it's going that way. And part of me is like unsatisfied, to be honest. They're saying, hey, you know what, maybe is this still the right thing? And again, I'm pulling it and say, okay, it looks like everyone's comfortable. So it could just be me. So that when a person like that throws that little bit of a grenade in there and pivots the conversation a little bit, I think that's fantastic. And it's especially in the space we are now, integrating 2 airlines, trying to manage 2 dual brands, trying to do all these things, bringing 2 employee groups. What I don't want is this, I think this is good enough and going in there versus, no, this needs to be the best, and I think you see it with teams
Yes.
a lot, right?
100%.
It's,
I think you're right on it. I think, your ability to create a culture rests on a desire to get to the honest truth to make it as good as it possibly can be. Yeah. You do it in a relationship-based way, and your relationships, just like your family's relationships, rested on a set of core values. Can you pull those values forward and clearly articulate what those values are to you?
Yeah, it's the one, and it's even an Alaska value. Like, I just feel at the core all the time, there's a whole bunch of things of how you're wired, but for me, it's I know when it's right and I know when it's wrong. And I've been in my whole career, so doing this for, being in the military and now, so I'm talking a long time, almost 4 decades. But throughout military business, like for me, there was always something at the core that either felt right or wrong.
Do the right thing is one of the core values at Alaska.
Right?
Yeah.
And do the right thing is based on a whole bunch of different values, right? It's based on, honesty and integrity and all those things. They all kind of form up to do the right thing. So for me, it's like if every time we made a decision at a company about a big thing, and all those decisions weighed against all your internal values, and then it ends up as saying, is this the right thing to do? And then to me, that's what it was. Is this the right thing?
That's cool because, you're hitting on 2 things. One is action. You have a bias to outcome and action.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's a really important bias in a performative world, a world where results matter. So, and you're using do the right thing as an emblem for a feeling that you have that rests on a set of core values.
Right.
Right? Call it honesty, whatever. And those core values, the do the right thing piece can get confusing for some when I say, look, sorry, Ben, but I just don't think we're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And you say, wait, hold on, Mike. I think we're totally doing the right thing. So that.
And I was cautious about saying it without like putting some context around it.
Okay, keep going. Yeah. Keep
And
going.
no, because everyone can have their version of do the right thing.
Yeah.
But I do think there's something universal about, and for me, and for my do the right thing, it's I always think about people. Like, what's the impact of people, right?
Again, you're relational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's the impact to the business? What's the impact to the bottom line? What's the impact to performance? What's the impact to all these things? And I think for me, it's kind of like a mosaic, all these things for me, this mosaic of everything that's important to me. So I have this mosaic that, okay, and if it's, whether it's family, whether it's business or personal. So if it's business, I have all these things that are important for me for the business, that people depend on me and our company to deliver. And this mosaic for me ends up being this do the right thing. So it could be a thing of greens or reds, and it's got to be majority all green, right? For me to say, okay, this is the right thing. It may not be perfect here, but if there's too much spattering of red in there, if there's too much red for me, it's like, okay, you know what? I got to go.
And is that you said it feels a certain way. So it's an embodied, is what speaks to you like a hot flash if it's not the right thing, or is what speaks to you like the aperture opens up and there's a breath of fresh air? Is it, I'm asking something kind of flowery, but it's actually quite technical.
No, I think like when it's right, like when the idea of Hawaiian Airlines came to me, for example.
Right. Which is, just for context, the recent acquisition. Was it an acquisition?
It was acquisition,
A
yeah.
recent acquisition that you're in the middle of a culture
Transformation and a business transformation.
whole thing.
Whole
Like
thing.
you're right in the middle of change.
We're in the midst of we're transforming Alaska into a global airline.
Hey.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool. And our employees are amazingly inspired by the vision. But when the idea came to me, I said, oh my gosh, if we can do this and pull it off. In my core, of course, we have to do all the due diligence, the financial analysis, the regulatory analysis, the brand analysis, the culture analysis, the labor analysis, all that analysis had to be done. Mm-hmm. But at my very core, from the day I thought of it and the day I brought it up to the board, I knew that if we did this, it would be transformational for us. And so all the analysis that happened 6 months later only validated that this was really the right thing to do. But there's this feeling that says yes, versus I'm going to do this thing and it's like, I don't have that yes, this is the right thing. And,
How do you tune yourself to be able to hear or feel that yes, which is basically your intuition, your self-talk, something, so that you can take action in an aligned way?
Also, so I'm an engineer. So here's, I think, I'm an engineer, I'm analytical, and this is where I think over time, you evolve as a leader, and you evolve. Before, everything needed to follow, engineers are very data-driven, formulas, metrics. And so before it was like, F equals MA, force equals mass times acceleration, and so many newtons are based on, so it was all like formula. It was like this has to equal this, or it doesn't work, right? Yeah. And so what's good now is that now if I have an instinct on something, I then use my analytical and my data background to say, okay, does it make sense? Does this thing make sense? Or I'm just getting excited about an idea that I'm enamored with. And so I think it's using both sides now. I'm using a little more feeling and trusting gut instinct with analysis and gut to validate that it's going the right way.
And then do you have a set of practices that are important for you to be able to be more tuned, to hear that voice?
meditation is probably the only thing that I've really changed in the last few years. I began meditating more and in a quiet space. I love my times in the morning, when I wake up and just being in silence, with a little bit of light through the windows and just sitting there and letting thoughts come to me about all sorts of things, and then thinking about something and letting it, when I thought about just thinking about all the things that could happen or could not happen with that. And for me, it's just I've learned to embrace it and not fight it. All these different thoughts that come in, and then just one triggers another. And it's funny because if you do it every day, these things just are there in the back. And one day, 1 week, 1 month, they all build on themselves to give you a clearer picture of what to do. And that's what I've learned over time.
Yeah, so just to decode that, it doesn't sound like you're doing in the morning when sitting with the light, this wonderful picture I'm imagining, but I know better being in the Pacific Northwest myself.
Yeah.
Sometimes the light is...
It's not sunshine. Let me tell you. And it's not like the sun's coming up, and it's more like this, this gray light coming in.
There's something coming in. But you're not doing a critical analysis for that X number of minutes.
No.
You are observing without judgment. You're watching the stitching between thoughts and just allowing space to be an active observer of the thoughts.
It's exactly that, yeah. And it's something like I never, if you would have told me 30 years ago, my 30-year-old self would be, it's got to work, right? But I think I'm a better leader today because I still have that analytical mind, and I love, like I said, outcomes and
that's right.
Numbers.
Yep.
Are so important for the business, no matter who you are, whether you're an athlete or whether you're a business. At the end of the day, numbers matter. And so I believe in numbers, but I also believe in how you get there. And I think how you get there can be the difference of sustainable success and fleeting success.
Well, you're very warm. And in that warmth, there is never a thought for me that, he's really wonderfully kind, but he kind of struggles with systems thinking, or he struggles with critical analysis. So literally you are the yin and yang. You have all of the warmth. This is why I wanted to sit with you in this format. You have all of the warmth, the genuine care, because you are relational in how you go about your life. And you have the ability to do systems thinking, logical analysis, to be able to say, where does this break? I felt something. Where does this break? And by the way, we're doing it together. And so it's not just me giving directive in an authoritative way. It's us moving forward to bring our very best forward. That's what we all need. As sure as I am here, if there is a working definition for me about modern leadership, you are embodying it.
Thank you, Mike.
And I give you that. I know it's a high compliment, but I've seen it, and I've seen it in action. And I've seen where you've made investments in the leadership trainings that you've included us in to help show your people how to invest in themselves so that they can be more fully themselves. Not many CEOs are investing in a true high performance well-being program across the organization to do it, And so I've seen you put your money where your mouth is. It's a feeling I have around you. And I know you're working relational and values-based. And the thing that I want to highlight is that they're not just words on walls. You didn't do the intellectual exercise to redesign the values. And as I've come to learn, you did go back to pen and paper on the merger to make sure that the values of Alaska are trued up for this acquisition, for this blending of cultures. And did they change the values that you're working towards?
We're pretty much have aligned on the values, but they're not changed very much. And what we did, we were fortunate with Hawaiian because what a wonderful culture they have. And if you've ever been to Hawaii, which I'm sure you have, you realize how special and unique Hawaii is. They have a connection. There's a strong family connection, which I love. They take care of each other.
Well, you are a great custodian for this. Yeah.
Well, and so I love that when I see them, and I see them with taking care of parents and grandparents, and how the family unit is so strong, how they are tied to the land, how they take care of the land, and how they're mindful of everything they do to keep Hawaii special. The land and the oceans.
Sounds like Montreal for you.
Yeah, yeah. And so when bringing our cultures together, is our culture is based on, being kind-hearted, and doing the right thing. And theirs is all about malama.
What's the word?
Malama, which is care. And so it was easy to bring those together to say this combination is 1 + 1 is going to equal 100. It's not. It's. This is why I think our employees feel so good about the future, because they see this combination as being transformative, because it's going to be more than just bringing two companies together. It's going to create the next generation of company for us, and so it's always fun to see this, and we're building it right now. It's happening right in front of our eyes. And I tell people, I said, you're in it right now. It's a lot of work, but I said, when you're going to look back 5 years or 10 years, you've created a new platform for our company that is going to be with us for decades to come.
Okay, stress and change can be synonymous, meaning that part of my working definition of stress is that it is change occurring, and there's stress on a system, stress on a person, whatever. If you frame stress like, oh, this is something, this is going to be something, the Chinese farmer Cohen or parable is really, I think, wonderful, meaning that we don't know how it's going to go. I'll reference the parable later because it's long. But the idea is like, we don't know how things are going to go, so let's see. Let's see how it goes. So the framing of change is materially important to the experience of the change. And you're framing the change as like, this could be, if we do this right, there's something really special that is going to change the way that so many people experience travel. And our families here, as part of the employee base, we're going to have something special to look back on and to experience while we're in it. Does that sound close to being right?
It's exactly how I feel. And I think how people are starting to feel that this thing is different. It's different. And I've been here 21 years. It's amazing to talk to people who have been here 30, 40, 50 years. And to say, hey, Ben, when I joined the company, the farthest we flew was San Francisco.
Which is about an hour and 45 minute
flight.
flight.
An hour and 45 minutes, today we fly all over the country, and of course, Mexico, Belize, Costa Rica, all that stuff. But now we're actually going global. We're flying to Tokyo in May, and Seoul in the fall, and Europe next year. And when I talk to our employees, they're like, wow, I never thought in my career that the company would end up being that. And then I realized that I saw some publication that, because our country we have a lot of big airline companies, but we are the 13th largest airline now in the world.
So this is important because it's like, what is this about? This is like a coming to age feeling.
Yeah.
Like we're entering where the big boys go.
Yeah.
But we're this, not small, mighty little whatever, but we're the Pacific Northwest hub. And now we're entering into this new phase. So there's is that what you're?
You nailed it. And one of the things I tell people is I don't want to lose. We talked about culture and values, is that as we become this bigger and a global airline, I don't want to lose what's been special about our company, about this small company feel, about connection, about the culture. This my whole thing is about this culture of empowerment, right? With the frontline employees, and this culture of empowerment with leadership.
Empowering them for what?
To be able, like in our world of airlines, you can imagine it's so regulatory. There's a whole bunch of regulatory rules. And then there's all these policies we put in place in a company. If you have to print them out, there's like books this big. And I say, look, you know what? Every employee at our airline is empowered to do the right thing, be kind-hearted, deliver performance, be remarkable, and own safety.
I happen to know your values because of our relationship, but you just eloquently stitched together that you hold the power to do these 5 values, a la virtues, and to do them at the highest level. Be remarkable is a new one that you just brought up. the owning the safety. So those are two new ones that you just added. But you're saying that you hold the power to do all 5 of those.
5 of those.
Okay, so I've got a bias here. I just want to run it by you and see if we're aligned or different. There's no right or wrong on this. But sometimes when the monarchy says, we're empowering you, okay, it's like they are giving power to another set of people, which I have a rash thinking about that. I don't hear you saying that, but I want to align with it, that you're already seeing people that they inherently hold power. And you're saying, please flex it in this way to be remarkable, to make sure we're taking care of safety, we're getting results, we're driving results, we're doing the right thing, and we're doing it in a kind-hearted way.
Yeah, Mike. It's what I tell people. Is I want to make sure you exercise your clout as a team member at our company, that you have all the authority to do this, and whether. If you need to pause the operation because you're not sure we're going too fast, hey, I don't feel good, pause it. Nobody's going to question you. Like, hey, you paused the operation, you stopped it because you wanted to check on something because you thought there was a safety issue. Great. And I don't care who you are. You could be a pilot, a flight attendant, a cleaner, a fueler, a mechanic. I don't care. Just stop it and say, hey, we're going a little too fast. We just got to dot I's and cross T's before. Anybody in our company is allowed to do that. Anybody.
You did that, I think, when there was a safety issue, and this was maybe a year ago. I couldn't believe you did it. It was totally the right thing. I was getting on one of your airlines, or I was getting on one of your flights.
We grounded the MAX.
And you grounded them all.
I grounded them all. And for me, that decision.
By the way, it went so far for me. I knew that you're of that character, but it went so far. Like, he's not risking my life to make a buck.
No, and it's
maybe explain that for folks at home.
Well, it goes back to our values, right? Own safety is our number one value.
Own safety.
And so when I got the call on the door, again, this is where it helps being an engineer, and I grew up in the maintenance world, right? I got the call, and I heard the mid-cabin door blew out, which was really weird for me because I knew the door, and I'm like, well, that door just doesn't blow out; it's bolted on.
Did you think it was a user error, or did you?
Then I asked some questions. So it was 2 quick questions I asked. I said, hey, what kind of airplane is it? A MAX. And we just started getting MAXes. So 18 months we had MAX. It's a MAX? And I said, how old is it? 10 weeks. So my maintenance and engineer mind went in. I said, well, that door doesn't get checked for 2 years from delivery.
Right.
So if that thing is 10 weeks old, it was an issue out of the factory. If it's an issue out of the factory, we have 65 of those flying.
Oh my.
I said, I don't know what's going on. And so I'm driving, and I called the chair of my board. I'm saying, like, I may have to ground the fleet. If I don't get an answer from Boeing engineers in the next hour, I'm grounding the MAX fleet. And so I see the engineers. I go through it. It's designed like I thought, because I'm, being my maintenance background. And once I saw the pictures of the airplane that I landed, and the structure, no damage to the structure, I'm like, all right, those bolts weren't in. I have to be sure. I got to check 65 airplanes. It was 60. We had 65 of them, and I'm grounding the whole fleet to check them. Now, for me, it was simple. I'm a maintenance guy. Take the sidewall off, take the insulation off, check. We're good. Unfortunately, once we started taking everything out, we found a lot of non-compliance, and we grounded the fleet before the FAA grounded the worldwide fleet before everyone else. And my CFO didn't say, Ben, you know how much this is going to cost us? Our chair of our board didn't say, Ben, are you sure that's a ton of? It was like, no. Put safety first.
Because that's cool, because you also, one of your core values is about performance.
Yeah.
And so those two can be at odds with each other.
Yeah.
And the first principle is safety.
First principle is safety.
Right? So you're working from the first principle is safety.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then do the right thing. Those two obviously align.
And to do the right thing, that was part of what I was saying. Like, to do the right thing for me.
Yeah.
And my whole set and everything building up was to do the right thing, ground the fleet. I could not be 100% sure that all those other airplanes.
What if your chairman would have said, I hear you, I think you're overreacting. Why don't we release half the fleet, check the other half, we'll spot it and see if there's a sampling here that we can figure out. What if that would have, it's hypothetical. How would you have managed that when you've got this strong thought?
One of the advantages, again, I have is my technical background.
Yeah, there you go.
And I think if someone did not have a technical background, you could take him down that path. For me, it's the world I grew up in.
So there's a competency there that you rest on.
Yeah, for me, it was like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is is I need to have 100% confidence. And until I have 100, the only way I get 100% confidence out of a new airplane coming out of the factory that has this discrepancy is for me to ground the fleet and take a whole look at them. Now, in my mind, I'd already calculated all the permutations, how long it would take us to inspect the fleet and all that. I knew the scope of work. And so, what I didn't count on was the reverberation across the entire industry of all the stuff we would find, right?
Yeah, right.
But if everything was per, the last 20, 30 years, it would have been a quick ground inspect, good, back in service.
Well done.
But for me, it was like, no, I'm not sure, down. The last thing I thought about was money. Last thing.
You know what? Oftentimes I listen to what people say, listen hard, listen to what people say, and I'm also listening for what they're not saying. And what you didn't say in your answer just now was, well, I'm a CEO, he's got to listen to me. Like you said, no, look, listen, I'm coming from competence. I know some things. We're partners in this. And so it was easy, we were aligned, but we're partners in the conversation. You didn't say, it's my call, stand down.
Yeah.
Like, you don't come that way.
No, and it's not the relationship we have.
That's right. Yeah, I can't imagine you ever.
No, and with our board, it's
go.
And our chair is wonderful, and it's not and she actually respects my technical background, so she pretty much said, it's your call. She just actually told me it's your call because she knew this was my area of expertise, and that I would do the right thing for everyone that depends on our company, and it's our employees, our guests, their safety first, and then everything else was secondary.
So, turning third base here, you've got a big motor. You do a lot. You're on your bike. You're doing all the high performance, well-being, self-care stuff that I would hope somebody who really wants to be their very best would do. When I say you're on your bike, you're racing. You have 15 races a year. Right? So you're on your bike.
Yeah.
Your fitness is important. And I wanted to understand where the motor came from. Is your motor coming from like a dark history and, I can't see it and feel it. But there's a theory about, there's 3 factors for high internal drive. Competence, you have it. Relationships, you have it. And autonomy, you have it. Not only do you have it, you value that so much that you're sharing it with all of your team members. You're relational in your approach. You value the autonomy. Anyone here has the power to speak up and say it. And you're encouraging competency across the board for skilling up. Listen, this is such a breath of fresh air. I could go on and on and on. I want to honor your time and say, Ben, again, for many reasons, thank you for your time. Thank you for this conversation. You're exactly the leader that I would hope I would have the chance to work with. So thank you.
Mike, I'm flattered being here with you, and this was such a fun discussion. And you took me down paths that I hadn't thought of. Thank you for a great talk.
Awesome.
Okay, that is another great conversation. Emma, I think we have one coming from the vaults next week. Is that right?
You are right. Some of these conversations are too good to only release once. So, as part of the From the Vaults episodes, we're revisiting a brilliant conversation you had with George Mumford.
Okay, this is a great conversation. It's just so good. There's so many gems. So for those who may not know him, George is a friend of mine and a legend in the world of elite sport, not just for who he's worked with, though the list is incredible. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Phil Jackson, the list goes on. But because of how he helps high performers unlock their greatness. We are kindred spirits in the way that we go at this to help others be still, to be real, and to be fully present. And let's face it, in today's high-pressured, high-distraction world, this conversation feels like a breath of fresh air. It's one of those conversations I think you'll want to hear again, or for the first time. Join us right here with my dear friend, George Mumford, on Finding Mastery.